This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Everything Went Black podcast. My good friend Paul Aloisio from Restless Spirit joins us again this week. This is his return. We recently discussed their forthcoming LP, and hopefully in the next couple weeks there'll be some interesting news about record release shows and things of that nature. This time around, Paul and I talk about vampire movies. For me, I was motivated by the recent release of the last voyage of the Demeter, which covers the travel of Dracula across the sea. So we expanded, we talked a little bit about the two Nosferatu films, the original and the 1979 Werner Herzog remake of sorts of that particular film. After you listen to this, be sure to check out the other horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. We have Brandon Legion's Horrorwolf 666, Into the Necrosphere, brought to you weekly by Jackie Smith. Of course, we have Everything Went Black. I come back with Necromaniacs along with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid. We have Break the Apocalypse with Mike's brother, John Draper. Soul Knox, brought to you by Carl Hikara. And I'd like to welcome aboard our newest member. This is Cheyenne's podcast, Iblis Manifestations. So be sure to check everyone out. If you want to support the show, please do so over on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, get access to bonus material. For $5 a month, you get early access to the regular stream episodes. For $25 a month, you can become a sponsor, promote your business, your band, whatever it is. And you get a monthly ad read, similar to what we do with Portland Distro. Of course, follow us over on Instagram and Facebook. I guess technically there's an X account, but we don't really engage in that too often, as well as Threads, which I guess is auto-posted from Instagram. Don't really directly do anything on those platforms, but follow us anyway. Paul, how's it going, man?
Hey, man, how are you?
Doing good. It's a weeknight, busy week. And, of course, always make fun to talk to you, man. Always make time to talk to you.
Yeah, dude, it's always a good time.
So how's things going with the new record? Record sounds great. I've been hearing a lot of great feedback about it. How's it going on your end?
Pretty good. I mean, we're hoping for good feedback, and we've pretty much been getting it. People are really into the first, and we're going to release another single this month, and then one more next month, and then the full album. So, yeah, I mean, feedback has been great. Everything, it's stations and everything. So,
yeah,
it's always good.
Well, I appreciate the you sharing the entire record with me, and it's been awesome.
Hell yeah.
People have actually contacted me because of I've been talking about you guys. They know that we did those dates together. So several people have hit me up directly about how they finally just checked you guys out and they're stoked. So yeah, I'm really excited. Looking forward to the release of the new album.
Oh, dude, that's great to hear. Yeah, it's like when we released the last one, we really hadn't done anything in a couple of years, and sort of like started from scratch. So past year or two, we've really been hitting it hard and trying our best to get our name out there, and it seems like it's working pretty well. So
yeah, fuck yeah. Well, this time around, we already got all the record business out on the last episode that came out, so we're actually going to just be talking about some cool shit tonight. All you horror fans know by now that the last voyage of the Demeter was released on last Friday. And at the time of the recording of this episode, that Friday is actually still in the future. So we're doing somewhat of a time slip here, with different realities. So right now is the past for the time that you're listening to this episode. So the movie is not out at the current time, but I am planning to watch it this weekend. Do you have any feelings about this movie, Paul?
no, to be honest,
No.
About it until you brought it up. I completely flew under my radar.
Yeah. It's I remember seeing previews for this in my most recent forays to the AMC Menlo Park Theater, and kind of was taken aback. I was like, oh wow, it's of course the Demeter is the ship that Dracula came over from Transylvania to to England. You know what I mean? And that's, I believe it's chapter 7 in the Dracula Bram Stoker novel. Okay, so this movie is about chapter 7 of the novel. It seems like that's kind of a cool thing, and then they're not naming it like, Dracula at sea or something stupid like that. They're actually making a reference to the book, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the first mention of it actually came from what we talked about doing a podcast about Nosferatu and stuff, and then you're like, it's going to be timely because of the last voyage of Demeter, and I was like, oh yeah, sick. But then I was like, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
So I looked it up. I was like, how did this completely like fly under my radar?
I feel like it's being overshadowed by that other movie about the hand. What the hell's that called? Like Talk to Me or something like that?
Talk to Me? Yeah.
Everyone's talking about that
everyone's
movie,
talking
man.
About that movie.
I'm not sold on it, dude.
No, me neither. I mean, like it's an A24 thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's hit or miss for me. But I don't know, like lately, especially with like the record and everything, I'm busy that I really haven't, like, I hear a lot of people talking about like this movie and that movie, and I'm like, oh, sick, I should check that out, and then I just never do.
Yeah, this Talk to Me thing, it feels I feel like it's kind of a work in some ways, you know what I mean? It's like I saw the trailer for it. I'm like, okay, so what? There's a fucking hand, a bunch of kids. What's in it for me? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but the last voyage of the Demeter, now that's something I can really get behind because it relates to what we're about to talk about tonight. Fucking vampires, Dracula, like cool shit like that. And that is completely overshadowed by the Hand movie. And it's kind of a drag, I think.
Yeah. Isn't Last Voyage, am I wrong, or that's a Disney film?
I haven't looked that deeply into it. You know what I mean? All I know is Andre Overdahl is the director, and he did the Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I quite enjoyed.
Oh, okay. I'm an idiot. I'm looking at it now. It's being released through DreamWorks.
Okay, yeah.
That I saw D. Is it not? Okay, produced by DreamWorks, distributed by Universal, which makes sense. This is how dumb I am. I read Disney at first. I was like, what?
Right on. No problem. But yeah, so it's kind of cool. That movie is coming out this Friday, and by the time you guys listen to this, it'll be out already, and most likely, I will have seen it by the time you guys listen to this, because I'm planning on watching it this weekend with my girlfriend. It's going to be like one of those dates, you know what I mean? So-called date. And so yeah, but you and I had this concept about doing an episode about the original Nosferatu and the remake. And that's primarily what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, I mean, both are two of my of all time. The first I saw, I think I've probably talked on the podcast about this, but I got a deep collection of like 3 movies for Christmas one year from my grandma, and there was a version of Nosferatu on it. And I read on with music by Typo Negative.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And so for anyone that hasn't heard me talk about this before, essentially, obviously, Typo Negative did not do a soundtrack for it. They just, they took some songs of Typos and put it in the movie. And it was, I think the era that this happened was around October Rust.
Okay.
I think. So only songs, from that time period are on it, clearly, because they can't time travel like we're doing in this podcast.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, like, came from the first album. Obviously very aggressive and hardcore and, very funny in some parts and doesn't really fit. But to me, whenever I think about Nosferatu, like, that's the version I have to go back to, the Typo Negative one,
I mean, it makes sense someone would do that. There's like, Pete Steele had that vampire vibe going on. He's like some Eastern European giant back in, when he was with us, at least.
Yeah. And it's funny, though. It was such a coincidence because at that time, well, still, Typo Negative is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I just randomly stumbled upon this DVD, like, no idea who Typo Negative was. She bought it for me because House on Haunted Hill was on it, and we had talked about that movie. So it was a crazy surprise. And to this day, whenever I turn on any other version, it just seems off to me.
Without the Typo score?
Yeah, it's just because that's how I first saw the movie, and it really clicked with me. And so many times in my life that anytime I go and watch with like a different score or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And especially Nosferatu being in the public domain. There's like so many different versions of that original film out there too,
Yeah. Well, it's something that I find fascinating, and not many people know about this, or maybe they do, and I'm just gatekeeping knowledge. But the movie almost didn't survive.
Yeah.
And, all the copies were burned and destroyed by Bram Stoker's estate.
Yes.
But I think one survived, and luckily we have this masterpiece of German expression.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1922 version of Nosferatu, directed by F.W. Murnau, with the screenplay by Henrik Galeen. And for those of you out there who don't know about this, it's based on Dracula by Bram Stoker. However, there's some license taken with the names of the characters to avoid any kind of legal issues, but that really didn't help them out at all,
No, yeah. It didn't help them because it was clearly the same story.
Yeah.
Interestingly, obviously, for anyone that's read Dracula and seen the movie, the depiction of you know the Dracula character was so drastically different. In Bram Stoker's novel, you didn't have this, character, the hook nose and the bald head, and I think he had like a long mustache or something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah, Count Dracula in the novel had a mustache, and I mean even his depiction of the way you visualize it in the novel differs very much from the Universal version with Bela Lugosi and any subsequent version of Dracula too.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like, maybe the Gary Oldman version in Bram Stoker's Dracula would probably be the closest one that I've seen
Yeah,
to the book.
I could dig that. Yeah.
But I'm happy they changed it because obviously any fan of Restless Spirit knows how important Nosferatu is to our imagery. It's all over everything. We printed it on so many designs, and we domain.
And of course, Dracula in the original Nosferatu 1922 film was played by Max Schreck, and the characters named Count Orlok. So, anyone out there is curious about that fact. And I got to be honest with you, Paul, that version, that vampire visage, I find that to be the most terrifying of all depictions of vampires.
Yeah, I do too. There's a certain magic to it that has never been replicated. And I think that, well, some of it was obviously intended, but on the other hand, a lot of it has to do with just the way that the film is presented, the way that you watch it, because the way that it was filmed. You know what I'm saying? That like jankiness and sort of like, I could almost describe it as like sometimes it feels like stop motion because the frame rate was so different back then, from what I understand about film.
Right.
And it gives the entire thing such an otherworldly quality that you can't replicate.
They played this on the last drive-in, not on this last season, but I think the season prior to that, and as one of those Joe Bob last drive-in episodes on Friday nights, and it was kind of cool, like having a silent movie like this playing on a show like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that it still holds up to this day. I think that if nothing else, don't pay attention to the storyline. The movie is just so incredible. There's a reason that it's lasted this long. It's just an amazing movie, and I'm really happy that it was able to survive, because it really almost didn't, which is the craziest part to me.
Yeah, that's really, imagine if this was if all the copies have been destroyed by the Stoker estate.
Yeah, it would just be an urban legend.
Now, some decades later, this movie was remade by Werner Herzog in 1979 as Nosferatu the Vampire. Okay, which actually is technically not correct, because according to the folklore, Nosferatu actually means vampire.
So it's like pizza pie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like pizza pie, Nosferatu the vampire. So
I don't think I even realized that before.
yeah, it's like saying this same thing twice, kind of. But I'm not going to split hairs. Werner Herzog's a maestro.
He could do what he wants. Yeah,
that guy could do whatever he wants. But in this updated version from 1979, all pretenses of this not being a Dracula story have been thrown out the window, because Klaus Kinski plays Count Dracula in this.
Yes, and also terrifying.
Yeah, and they're using the names from the book. We've got pretty much an all-star cast. We've got Isabella Adjani, who's playing Lucy Harker, not Mina Harker. Okay. In the original source material, there was Lucy and Mina. Mina was Jonathan Harker's wife, and Lucy was her friend who was bitten by Dracula. So I guess they're kind of combining both characters in the Herzog version. We have the late Bruno Ganz as Jonathan Harker, and he's just a master craftsman when it comes to acting. You might remember him from Wings of Desire, as well as his role of playing Adolf Hitler in the film Downfall. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Highly recommend checking out Downfall. Bruno Ganz plays a great Hitler. And Wings of Desire is just a classic movie. You should check that one out. That's Wim Wenders' film. Rounding out the cast, we got Roland Topper as Renfield and Walter Leidengast as Van Helsing. Van Helsing plays a sort of a minor role in this version of the film.
Yeah, I almost forget that he's here. He's in the movie half the time.
Yeah. And this basically tells a version, an interpretation of the Dracula story, and Herzog's good like that. I don't know if you ever caught his version of Bad Lieutenant, which came out about 12 years ago.
No.
Oh man, I'm not going to say it's good, but it's pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a remake of Abel Ferrara's masterpiece. It's like he saw the movie and he already had another story in mind, but he wanted to filter it through some of the elements of the Abel Ferrara film,
Yeah.
Have you even heard about this movie?
No, I mean, most of my knowledge of Werner Herzog is I think he's a great documentarian. Grizzly Man, you've seen that?
Oh yeah. Brilliant.
So much of his work that I've really watched through is type stuff.
If you can catch his version, it's called Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. So it doesn't even take place in New York. It takes place in New Orleans. Nicolas Cage, totally unhinged, plays the main character.
Of course.
There's a totally different story than the Abel Ferrara movie. There's a couple of scenes that he reinterprets, like where there's a scene in Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant where he's hassling these two young ladies from New Jersey who are having a night in New York City doing bad things. And Nicolas Cage's Bad Lieutenant character hassles this young lady and her boyfriend, doing drugs in some club in New Orleans. So yeah, that's a couple of scenes get reinterpreted. But yeah, that's kind of the same treatment, I guess, Herzog did with this version of Dracula, which he named Nosferatu the Vampire.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's close enough to this real. Where it doesn't feel like a total, like rework, but there's enough differences in Werner Herzog's version.
Well, the ending, the ending's quite different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess we could spoil it. It's a 1979 movie.
Yeah.
But the final shot, riding off into the distance, almost, like the new Dracula. I love.
Yeah, Harker becomes Dracula, basically, which is, and now The version of Dracula in this one, he's like more of a romantic. You know what I mean?
There's definitely more of like, I guess, sensual aspect to it, whereas Max Shrek was just terrifying. This, I always wondered if the intent was to sort of really get the audience to empathize with Dracula in a way, and I think that's what it was supposed to mean. I think that almost like a human element to Kinski's depiction, whereas Max Shrek was really just, the lurking terror.
Yeah, Max Shrek was definitely a beast. We come across Kinski's version of Dracula, and he's scary. Pale. He's got the fangs, bald head. You get a sense of incredible loneliness with his character. And when Harker meets him, he even talks about how, there's living through the centuries, there's much worse things than death, and this whole world weary, vibe to the character.
Totally. And I think that this is one of those movies, especially that, like, first of all, you could tell that it was made by someone that was really just made to make documentaries. Because a lot of, to me, the most stunning shots are really like the landscape in this movie tells so much of the story. Even the opening credits that set the scene of, the catacombs or long distance shots, and everything about it just feels very big yet lonely.
That opening shot is kind of jarring, actually. The first time you see it, because it's not that's actual people. Those are real skulls and decaying bodies and things like that.
Yeah, and not only that, but the score by Popol Vuh. Are you familiar with them besides this movie?
Oh yeah,
I love that group. But this soundtrack is also one of my favorites. I think it's awesome, and it like I said, it really just sets the tone and the feel of this. This is a movie that just gets everything right, and it's a movie that you almost, as pretentious as it sounds, it's like this is a movie that you feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean 100%. And in some ways it follows suit from the original source, because like the original source being a silent film is more about this, this kind of sensory, while it's an impressionistic film. And even though the remake is, has sound and dialogue, it still is very, very impressionistic.
Yeah, definitely. It just feels like a work of art, which is, it's also, with the soundtrack and with the visuals, it's kind of a movie that, as much as you want to sit there and pay attention, by all means, everyone should. It's a good movie to just have out if you need to get your mind off things.
Well, one of the, you have Kinski, which commands the screen, and then you have Ajani, when Isabella Ajani, when she's in it. She's definitely this very striking, lady. The blue eyes and dark hair and pale skin and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, because I could never really put my finger on it, but her character really is very important to the visual identity of the film. Whereas, you think about the movie or any Dracula Nosferatu remake thing, and you're really only fixated on the vampire, but she's a huge part of what makes this movie really unique and feel whole.
I'm going to go as far as to say that Isabella Ajani is my favorite You know, even though she's not actually playing Mina, but she's my favorite Mina Harker, actually.
Yeah. Well, what was the reasoning for the change in that?
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer. I mean, they just combined both characters into like one, I guess. You know, and I mean, Lucy, you know, straight up turns into a vampire in the original. And you know, and Mina gets bitten, but she's being drawn into Dracula's world. You know, in the novel, that's like he wants to make her his, you know, spend time with her, basically. You know, with this version of the story, you know, just going back to Kinski as Dracula, the scenes in the castle, like you get a sense of that castle being in ruins. Like there's shots of like the windows of the room that Harker's staying in, where the glass is broken and there's like, you know, plant life and things like that. So it's like he's like inhabiting this ruin, you know, where everything just seems to be in dark and like cold and in disrepair, and there's no sense of like elegance or opulence or any of those things.
Yeah. It's very, I think that it is very tragic on his end. It's almost like, you know, speaking about like the loneliness of the character, and I think that once again the setting really helps to tell that story and to express that, and that's of that.
And then when he comes to the, you know, to England, you know, there's these scenes with him like looking in the window, and he's very much this like loner character, just sort of wandering through the city, which is being ravaged by the plague. It implies that the plague arrives along with Dracula.
Yeah, totally. I mean, without a doubt.
Yeah. You
And,
know, he travels over with these like caskets filled with dirt, and when they open it up, there's like rats in there. And next thing you know, this whole city's infested with these plague-ridden rats.
yeah, and which is also another really striking scene as well. Just like, you know, and I don't know. I really just always go back to. I feel like the way that Werner Herzog filmed the whole thing, to me, is what makes this movie so special. His framing of the shot, visions of what to leave in and what not. It just, you know, especially England as well, the way that he just presents it is so awesome. And actually, another thing before I forget, what language did you watch this movie?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I've recently watched it in the English version, because they actually filmed this movie twice. They have a version of it all in German, and you know, the Blu-ray that I have, the Shout Factory one, has both versions on it. So I watched the English one.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because I think they literally filmed the movie twice.
It's fucking mental, man.
But that's Werner Herzog for you, I guess. There are a lot of people that I've heard that they prefer the German version. Me, you know, I don't. One of those things where when I first saw the movie, I was just so awestruck by it, and it was the English version. So to me, the English version seems like the correct version. But that's the same thing with, like, you know, going back to the 1922 version, where it's like hearing it with typo negative is the only thing that really makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched both versions. It's cool with German. You know, German just is such a brutal sounding language in general, you know. And yeah, but you know, the English, you know, English is the only language I really speak, so it's
yeah. Also, really, like, in watching both, I really don't think it makes much of a difference. anyone really argue that one is better than the other. But I have heard that from a bunch of people. I just don't really care.
So now between the Murnau version and the Herzog version, which is your favorite?
Uh, it they're so different yet similar that it's like I would have to say that it really, first of all, depends on what I'm going for, like what my mood is. If I want something that I find, atmospheric but beautiful and darkly sad, I'm gonna go with the Herzog version. If I want something that, you know, is more just um, visually striking in a different way, and also a little more on the I don't want to. Well, yeah, I guess I would say that the 1922 version is scarier to me.
Yeah, yeah, because he's scarier in that version. In Herzog's version, he's more like this kind of emo, like sad boy Dracula, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. That's a really tough question. I would have to say the 1922 version, simply based on the amount of times that I've watched it, and the way that that imagery has influenced my art and music and just everything for so many years. But I mean, the Werner Herzog version is so incredible that even the fact that I could have this sort of debate that I'm not sure which is better, instead of saying, oh, the 1922 version, no matter what, that's so much better. That's really saying something.
For me personally, like I acknowledge the original, as being like crucial to the horror genre. But I gotta say, man, I kind of side more with Herzog's version of it. I know that's a wildly controversial statement, but that's just how I feel about it.
No, it really makes sense because, like I said, and I say this all the time, but a lot of movies and art and everything, it's about the way that it makes you feel or the way that you connect with it. And it's like, I just personally, I have such nostalgia for the original version that it's like nothing can take its place. But if I was going to show someone, if I was like, let's sit down and watch a really good movie right now, I'd be more inclined to show them Werner Herzog's version.
Yeah, that's a movie. Yeah,
it's I mean, clearly, like the technology came so much further that it is what it is. But I really think that's a valid to prefer the 1979 version. 100%, I do.
Yeah. Actually, there's another interesting vampire film that just surfaced on Shudder. That's called Vampire, Vampire, and it takes place in Serbia. It's about a British guy visiting out there, and very slow moving, very atmospheric. Kind of like imagery driven, and just has like this really brooding like atmosphere to it. And if you're ever looking for something to check out, I definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'm always in the mood for a new vampire movie because it's like, I don't know. I feel like they're kind of hard to get for reason. And it shouldn't be, but it just feels like it is. There are so many good ones, but so many awful ones at the same time.
Yeah.
That it's like the ones that are truly great really like set the bar higher. And I don't have as much tolerance for shittier vampire movies.
Yeah, and I'm always a sucker when they kind of combine like folk horror with it, like this Shudder vampire movie does. It's like it takes place in the old country. There's like almost like a Wicker Man vibe to this other movie.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Mike and I are going to do an episode of Necromaniacs on it.
You said that's vampire like IR?
Just VAMPIR. Yeah.
IR. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's like maybe 5 people in the cast, and a couple of extras. It takes place in Serbia, Eastern Europe. It's got that, just like that vibe. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean that seems a lot, closer to the source material. I'm not really a fan of. I guess you could just say like the modern day vampire stuff. I really like the folklore of the vampire, and
yeah.
When it's just I don't know, vampires in 2023 don't really do anything for me.
Yeah, definitely. What was that movie that came out in the 90s, The Queen of the Damned, like the new metal vampire movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely was not a good move.
No, it was not. But you know what I think was? What We Do in the Shadow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That movie was awesome.
And the TV series is good too. I like both.
Yeah. I've never seen the TV series, but I've only heard good things. I love in the movie, what do they call him? Peter?
Yeah.
The Nosferatu type character. He's awesome.
You can tell that even, when horror comedy is a hard thing to do, you know what I mean? And it mostly fails, in my opinion. But when the filmmaker is actually a fan of the genre, it really comes through when they're paying tribute to it. They're paying homage to the genre, and they're not being too ironic with it,
Totally.
And that's the case with What We Do in the Shadows, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that I really love that movie so much the first time I saw it, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. Like, I don't know. I just like you, I think that horror comedies are really hard to get right, so I was kind of skeptical at first, but I thought it was fucking hilarious, man.
It took me a while to see it, actually, for that reason, because I kind of dismissed it for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff that's just about to be released or just came out that I recommend as far as vampire movies go.
What else would you say in that regard, following like the theme of like I don't know how to pronounce it. Right?
Vampire. Just vampire.
Vampire. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm real hyped on that one.
Yeah.
I just recently rewatched the 3 Blade movies. Those are actually really cool too.
Yeah. Blade's great.
Yeah. The first 2 at least. I like the third one, but the first 2 I think are like pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. I think obviously this really doesn't have much to do with or anything to do with Nosferatu, but Let the Right One In, I think, is an amazing movie as well.
I totally agree. I don't think it was necessary to remake it in English as an American film.
No, I saw like a little bit of that, and I was like, I this doesn't do anything for me.
And the novel was excellent too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And then obviously you got Salem's Lot, which that's a pretty, clearly the character of Barlow, they were really going for that classic Nosferatu look, which the TV miniseries is pretty great, but very, very long.
I love it, man. That actually is one of them. Like as a young kid, when I saw that movie, that show terrified me. I mean, I was like disturbed by that when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, dude, the window scene, horrifying.
Always, yes. That was shot backwards too. Like that film was like shot and it was reversed, so all of the facial expressions were like real sketchy looking and everything.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's a very striking scene, and it really stands out to me. And it stands out to like everybody. That's the scene that everybody always talks about from that movie. Well, miniseries, whatever you want to call it. I just call it a movie, but I didn't even know it was a miniseries when I first watched it. I was like, damn, this is long. I was watching it on VHS, and then I found out it was like a miniseries.
Yeah, No, it was on television, man, which is crazy if you think about it. That was on like regular TV.
Well, same thing about with like, the version of It with Tim Curry.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was also a TV show. Yeah. Well, dude, what else is going on with the band?
Really nothing much. I mean, just getting a new record out, and we're going to be announcing a tour soon, and we're just going to keep plugging along and doing what we do best,
Yeah, man. And I'm looking forward to checking you guys out locally. Hopefully there'll be some local dates to be announced soon.
Yes, I think there might be something.
Right on. Well, thanks for stopping in, and we'll talk to you soon, Paul. Take care now.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, dude. Good night.
Later.